Hello, friends, and happy Easter. um, Today is Easter Sunday, and to prepare ourselves, during this Easter season, right? We've been preparing for this day, but now we want to shift, and now we want to prepare ourselves for Pentecost. And today on Easter Sunday, we have some beautiful readings from the Acts of the Apostles. And Saint Peter, he says this. He says, "They put him to death by hanging him on a tree. This man God raised on the third day, and granted that he be visible not to all the people, but to us, the witnesses chosen by God in advance, who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead." You ever considered the strange fact that Jesus, when he rises from the dead, he doesn't appear to Caiaphas, the high priest who ordered his execution, nor does he appear to Pilate. He doesn't appear to the people who put him to death. You would think, okay, this if he appeared to them, then boom, that would be proof that he is who he says he is, and they would fall down and worship him and hopefully in repentance. So it's strange that Peter's like, yeah, he didn't make himself visible to those people. And if you were the Son of God and you wanted to convince people that you are who you say you are, you would think you would go to the high and mighty and the powerful, the most influential in the world. But that's not where God starts. He starts small. He starts, reveals himself to the women outside the tomb, and he reveals himself to a couple who are on their way away from Jerusalem. But Peter, he says here that the witnesses chosen by God in advance, who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. Years ago, this is before I was a Franciscan friar. I had just graduated from college, and as a gift for my graduation, my grandparents paid for me to go for a trip to Europe and to the Holy Land. And so I got to be in the Holy Land. I got to see Mount Calvary. I got to see the Sea of Galilee. And I had Mass in these really beautiful places. And, one of the highlights of my entire life was I had the opportunity to celebrate Mass inside the empty tomb, the tomb that the gospel says is empty today. I was able to serve Mass there. And while I was serving Mass, I realized something, that when the priest lifted up the host and said, "This is my body," I was like, there's Jesus. I just knew it. um, and towards the end of that trip, I was kind of, I walked away a little bit dissatisfied. All my questions and kind of the expectations that I had weren't necessarily fulfilled. My questions weren't necessarily answered. And so to the Lord in prayer, I'm like, what the heck, Lord? Like, why did you bring me here? And, it was funny because the Lord was like, well, you actually didn't need to come here. Obviously it was good that I was there, but what he reminded me of, he said, "This is where I used to be. This is the land where I used to walk." But he said to me in prayer, "But now I'm down the street from you. Now I'm in every tabernacle." Because you ever notice that when Jesus appears to his disciples, as we'll hear over the next couple days with these readings, that people don't recognize him. He's able to be in multiple places at once. And with the disciples on the road to Emmaus, it says that after he broke bread, he said he vanished from their sight and their eyes were open and they recognized him in the breaking of the bread, which is code for the Eucharist. And what I've come to understand, brothers and sisters, is that what St. Peter is saying here, that the witnesses chosen by God in advance who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead, meant that when they were encountering Jesus, they weren't encountering him as a ghost. That's why he says he eats and drinks. So he's not a figment of their imagination. But the connection, his presence is connected to eating and drinking. His presence, risen from the dead, is something people don't easily recognize until he actually reveals himself to them. His presence is able to be in multiple places at once. And the seed of thought and idea that was planted in me in that time of prayer when I was in the Holy Land, now it has come to fruition, brothers and sisters, and I can tell you that Jesus is who he says he is, and if you want to see him, he's in the Eucharist. Because if God is going to leave his presence with us, he's going to leave it in a way in which we are able to commune with him. So why does Jesus do these seemingly random things after he rises from the dead? Why is he cooking bread and fish on the shore? Why is he appearing in multiple places at one time? Why is it that people aren't able to recognize him? I believe it's because he was preparing them, preparing the apostles, and shaping their vision for a new way in which he will be present with them after he ascends to the Father and after he sends the Spirit. And as St. Francis of Assisi says, it's by the Spirit that we're able to recognize Jesus. My challenge to you is this, is to recognize that in the Eucharist is the risen Jesus, Jesus whom people aren't able to easily recognize, Jesus who is able to be in multiple places at once, and Jesus who connects his presence with eating and drinking. And so on this Easter Sunday, go to Mass and recognize the presence of the risen Jesus. Thanks for joining me. God bless.